Good evening. Shabbat Shalom. Despite it being a rainy day out there, I'm glad that we can gather together this evening and here, along with those who are joining us in sacred virtual community, including the rest of the Meyer family. Eli is getting over the same light case of strep that it feels like his entire class has had. He's good. But unfortunately, our wonderful soloist this evening is at home taking care of Eli. And Sal, we have the pleasure of being together for Shabbat, singing nice and loud, together as a collective, allowing our voices to rise to the heavens. We begin on page 10, as we are wont to do. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad, hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad, hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. 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 Hine ma tov, hine ma tov. Ya la la, ya la 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 la. Hine ma tov, hine ma tov. Ya la la, ya la 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 la. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. We turn in our prayer books to page 2 as we prepare to begin Shabbat with the kindling of the lights of Shabbat. It is a pleasure to invite forward Alice Mahler and Rabbi Mark Mahler, who will lead us in Kiddush on page 5 immediately following. We are on page 2.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. And we invite you to rise if it is comfortable for you to do so, as we join together in our blessing over Shabbat and the sweetness of this day.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishar b'mitzvotav v'latzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon hilchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit, ki hu yom tevilah l'mikra'ei kodesh, Zecher Siat Mitzrayim Kiranu V'chata V'tanu Kidasha Mikol Ha'amim V'shabbat Kodshecha Me'ava u'v'ratzon Kimchatanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Chaim. Thank you, Lord. Shabbat Shalom. And you're welcome to be seated as we continue on page 12, words of Psalm 95. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai, to raise a shout for our rock and our deliverer. Lechu neranena, yai lai 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 lai, la Adonai, lai 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 lai, Nahariya, yai lai 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 lai, Letzor Yishenu, yai lai 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 lai. Let us sing out to God, the maker of all, sure and strong. Let all of creation from mountain to sea hear our song. Lechu neranena, yai lai 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 lai, la Adonai, yai lai 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 lai, Nahariya, yai lai 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 lai, Letzor Yishenu, yai lai 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 lai. For all of the wonder in all of God's light, we rejoice. So now let us listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice. Lechu neranena, yai lai 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 lai, la Adonai, yai lai 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 lai, Nahariya, yai lai 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 lai, Letzor Yishenu, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. And on page 17, on the very bottom of the page, we find the continuation of Psalm 99, a psalm we perhaps most often associate with our Torah liturgy. And indeed, in my mind, it is related to tomorrow morning's Torah portion. Indeed, as we will study, never one to miss a shameless plug, at 9 o'clock in the library here at Temple Emmanuel of South Hills or on Zoom, as we will study, there's a confusing verse where Aaron is preparing for Yom Kippur and sets aside 2 goats, one for Adonai and one for Azazel. Our commentators break their teeth on who or what or why Azazel may be. Is it perhaps a demon of some sort, that which serves as a counterpoint to God? Is it perhaps a place in the wilderness? Is it perhaps, according to Ibn Ezra, you don't actually get to know until you're over the age of 33? And while many of us are, I can't trust that everyone online is over the age of 33. So I can't tell you what Ibn Ezra seems to think until you're over that age. You'll have to join us tomorrow morning. But I will say that most commentators believe that Azazel is associated with a place, perhaps, as Sadia Gaon tells us, with a mountain. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu on the bottom of page 17. We bow toward God's holy hill, not in sacrifice, but in prayer this evening. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. And on pages 20 and 21, we welcome the personification of Shabbat with words of Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Hishmiyanu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor ha'beracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha. Sof ma'aseh b'machrat v'techila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, Ki va'orech kumi ori. Uri, shir daberi. Kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. I invite you to rise if it is comfortable to do so as we continue with stanza 9, welcoming Shabbat. Boi v'shalom materet ba'ala, Gam b'simcha uv'tohola, Toch emunei am segula. Boi kala, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Before we continue our welcoming on page 24, welcoming God's ministering angels with words of Shalom Aleichem, I invite you to continue your welcoming by turning to those beside you, wishing them a Shabbat Shalom, using the comment box to engage in sacred community. When you are ready, I invite you to be seated as we continue page 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Would you join me in the English in the middle of page 27? Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days, lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'almad yivrach hirtei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayedecho Beit Yisrael, bagala, uv'izman kariv, v'meru, amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'alam ulal me'amaya, yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudusha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'meru amen. We continue page 28, our Baruch Hu praise, inviting you again to rise if it is comfortable to do so. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. Barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Together in the English on the bottom of page 30. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzivaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. And on the bottom of page 32, everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. You're welcome to be seated. Page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha Uchtavtam al mezuzot peitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. On the top of page 39, together in the English. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Our service continues on page 40. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, Norah tehilot, Osefele, Norah tehilot, Osefele, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. V'ne'amar ki fad Adonai et Yaakov u'galo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai ga'al Yisrael. On the top of page 43, our Hashkivenu prayer, asking for a sense of shelter, a sense of protection and peace with the onset of evening. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Though I absolutely love the version of Vishamru that Sierra has been introducing in our congregation over the last year, it seems a bit ambitious without her here. So maybe we should stick to our old favorites, shall we? Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam oti leolam Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash Shabbat vayinafash Shabbat vayinafash Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. As we prepare for the start of our Amidah, our standing prayer on page 46, not only do I invite you to rise, but I invite you to turn your focus to the words in the middle of page 47. Prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city, but prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. We continue page 46. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehillatcha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chaste Avot V'Imahot Umevi Gula Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagin Baruch atah Adonai Magin Avraham Vezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechaye hakol ata rav lehoshia, morid hatal, mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim verofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar, michamocha bal gevurot, umido melach, melech memit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, uchdoshim b'chol yom yalu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. I invite you to continue with the words of this section of our service through page 60, adding the silent prayers that can only come from each of our own hearts. And when you have finished your silent prayers this evening, I invite you to be seated. Shalom Rahava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rahava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom rahava Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom rahava Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit u'v'chol shah b'shlomecha. Shalom rahava Yisrael tasim leolam. Shalom Rahav al Yisrael Amcha, tasim leolam, tasim leolam, tasim leolam. On page 253 in our Sidorim, we find words of Mishaberach Lecholim, our prayer for those in need of healing. We hold in our hearts many this day, those whom I have been speaking with throughout the course of the week, those whom I have been asked to mention this evening, those whom you hold in your hearts. And if there are loved ones, family, friends, members of your community whom you are remembering, for Mishaberach Lecholim, a prayer for all who are ill, I invite you to share their names at this time.
John Paul Mahovsky, Lenny Shore. Jennifer Pickles.
Patrick Anderson, Steve Lutover, and Gail Eisenstein. Melissa Scottson. Maria Blazer.
Roughing of Ukraine youth.
Rob Godfrey and Carolyn Reese. Lisa Steinfeld.
Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed are you, God, who brings a measure of comfort to those we have named aloud and those whom we hold in our hearts this Shabbat. Mishaberach Avotenu Mikor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Mikor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. A frail old man went to live with his son, with his daughter-in-law, and with his 4-year-old grandson. The old man's hands, they were starting to tremble, and his eyesight was starting to get a bit blurry, and his steps were growing weak and frequently faltered. The family had the practice of coming together to eat dinner at the table, but the elderly grandfather's shaking hands and poor eyesight was making this family ritual difficult. Peas and vegetables tended to roll off of his spoon and get smushed into the carpet. When he grabbed his glass, water or milk or his beverage would often shake on the tablecloth and on his shirt. The son and daughter-in-law became agitated. They became irritated with the mess that happened every dinner time. We have to do something about grandfather, they would say. I've had enough of that spilled beverage, those smushed peas. I've had enough of cleaning up the floor. So the husband and wife decided that they were going to set a small table for grandfather on a floor that was more easily cleaned and far less intrusive to their dinnertime ritual. There, their grandson's grandfather, their father, ate alone while the rest of the family enjoyed their dinner. Since he had broken a dish or two, They even began serving him his food in a wooden bowl. Whenever they would look over at Grandpa, sometimes he had a tear in his eye as he sat alone, but it sure was easier to clean up when he was done. One evening, before supper, the father noticed his son playing with wooden blocks on the floor before dinner began. He asked, "What are you making?" Just as sweetly, the boy responded, "I'm starting to make a bowl for you and for Mama to eat from when you grow older." The 4-year-old smiled and went back to work. Tears began to stream down the parents' face. No words were spoken, but they knew the error that they had made and what must be done. That evening, the son took his father's hand and led him gently back to the family table. For the remainder of his days, he ate with the family as part of their ritual. And for some reason, neither husband nor wife seemed to care when a fork was misplaced or dropped, when milk was spilled, or when their tablecloth needed washing. Storyteller Penina Schramm tells this story in her book, The Hungry Clothes, writing one of the best-known teaching tales in world folklore. This story exists in many versions and throughout many cultures. Those stories that are best known, those that are most often told, are repeated because their morals are inconvenient and they're all too readily discarded. Quote, "You shall rise before the aged and show deference to the old. You shall fear your God, I am Adonai," we read in this week's Torah portion. You should fear God? Every other verse in the chapter that mentions God does just that. It mentions God. Only in the 5th year may you eat of the fruit of the tree. I am Adonai your God. You shall keep my Sabbaths and venerate my sanctuary. I am Adonai your God. Don't start consulting with ghosts or with familiar spirits. I am Adonai your God. None add the implicit risk of punishment that we should fear God, like the command to respect our elders. Perhaps because it is a commandment inconvenient and too readily discarded. Particularly in this day and age, when advances in technology, coupled with increased life expectancy, mean the divide between older and younger generations is greater than at any point in human history, it feels harder and harder to prioritize kibud zakenim, honoring the aged and elderly. Gramps can teach me about rotary phones and living with an icebox? So what? Big deal. To which the response should be, yeah, it really is a big deal. Not because you're going to be in a situation to replicate the exacting details of the experiences that our elderly possess, but because there is a measure of wisdom attained through that experience from which we can all learn. We are surrounded by facts in this world, but so often lacking in knowledge. And it's been true of every age of history. Generating information may be the pursuit of the young, but generating meaning and wisdom can only come with age and with experience. Whether we arrive at the correct action, honoring our elders, through words of the folk tale, a little boy showing the example his parents were setting that he would then replicate, or whether we get to the correct action through the words of this week's Torah portion, realizing that it's not only a selfish concern that we ourselves would want to be taken care of, but that we will always have something of value to contribute to subsequent generations. May we all strive to embody the words of Torah, honoring those with experience and perhaps with wisdom, rising before the aged, showing deference to the elderly. We have so much to keep learning, as Pirkei Avot reminds us. Who is wise? one who continues to learn from everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I invite you to turn back now in your prayer books, page 282 on the bottom of the page. There we find words of Aleinu L'Shabach. Page 282. When you have found your page, I would invite you to rise as we continue with words of Aleinu L'Shabach. Aleinu L'Shabach L'Adon HaKol, L'Tet Gedula Leotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kugoye HaRatzot, V'lo Samanu K'mishbechot Hadama, Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kahem, V'goralenu Kechol Hamonam, V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. V'nemar v'haya Adonai L'melech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. You may be seated. A reading on the bottom of page 293 as we prepare for words of Kaddish Yatom. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. This evening we do remember. We remember two who have been taken from us in recent days, for whom we are observing the period of Shloshim, David Greenberg and Lynn Mandel. In this Shabbat, we mark the Yartzeit, the commemoration of the passing of Harry Auerbach, Martha Y. Berman, David Bremen, Bennett Allen Burston, Irving Cantor, Eric Cantor, Dorothy Cohen Davis, Sandra Derrick, Gerald Diamond, Arthur J. Diskin, William H. Drummond, Emmanuel Dime, Elaine Egger, Lillian Freeman, Frida Friedman, Morris Friedman, Helen Gazzo, Rochelle Gerber, Rose S. Glasspool, Frida May Israel, Morton Israel, Will Joseph, Robert Irving Lacey, Minnie Latterman, Bessie Lichtenstein, Bernhard Lieberman, Marie Leuckrek, Albert London, Melvin Mallinger, Eleanor Plattner, Samuel J. Rydeboard, Ethel Riesberg, Agnes Roche, Elizabeth Sarah Schmerling, Phyllis Schneider, Alan Simon, Philip Solomon, George Teplitz, Gertrude Wiseman Thomas, Doris Cooper Weiner, Frida Weissman, and May Zubroff. If there are others whom you are remembering this Shabbat, or if I have inadvertently mispronounced the name of a loved one, I invite you to share their names at this time. Yehei zichronam livracha. May their memories be for us a continual and everlasting blessing. Words of Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 294. And I would invite you to rise together with those who mourn. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah ba'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'izman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei almaya. Yit b'harach v'yish tabach v'yit ba'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh v'yit hadar v'yit aleh v'yit halal shemei d'kudsha barich hu le'elah min kol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata damiran ba'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May God, who makes peace in the highest of heavens, make peace for us and for all who mourn. And together we say, Amen. You may be seated. One of the more fun parts of having the rare opportunity to lead a service solo is it forces me as a service leader to truly focus on the words of prayer before me. So often when there are two of us, can use the opportunity where someone with a slightly more wonderful voice is leading us in song or prayer to think about that which I might say next, or to make sure that I'm on the right page so I know where to direct everyone else. This is a long way of saying I haven't chosen a closing song yet, and so I invite you to turn to the back of your book with me, as together we find those words that might make for a fitting conclusion to our service this evening. Lots of great choices in the back of this book. On page 343, let's keep it simple, shall we? Toward the bottom of the page. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. With tremendous gratitude to those who have joined us online, hi Evelyn and Eli, and to those who are with us in the room, I invite you to join us for a nosh as I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.